Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially, you might be able to see in front of me, it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion, which is tropical houseplants. Hopefully, possibly your big passion as well, if you've kind of come across this video. Right, so the plant in front of me, some of you might be able to recognize, it's what's commonly known as the Alocasia Frydek. It isn't, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but as you can see, it's quite a large plant. I've been growing this for about a year now, and I'll lift it up and quickly show you, purely because otherwise all you would see is the Frydek. Let me just lift it up so you can see the sheer size of this plant. And I'll pop it back down again because didn't think today that I was going to be filming this, and I've just watered it this morning, so it's a heavy pot anyway. It's even heavier now and dripping all over me. But yes, so this is what's commonly referred to as the Alocasia Frydek. Now, however, this is actually the Alocasia Micholitziana. Sometimes you might see this as the Alocasia Micholitziana Frydek. It is actually the Micholitziana. The Frydek, and this is something I was schooled quite quickly when I first got this plant and posted about it really excitedly on Instagram by a local kind of plant enthusiast and plant hobbyist who also has one of the biggest businesses when it comes to ordering tropical houseplants online in the UK, which is Turner Tropical. And Carl, wonderfully knowledgeable person when it comes to tropical plants. Bless him, he's such a humble person, he would never admit to this himself. Also still very much a hobbyist as well, so still has that excitement when talking about plants, even though he deals with it every day. So if you're in the UK and you've not checked out Turner Tropical, by all means, please do. It's a great, great store. And yes, so he was saying that a lot of people refer to this as the Frydek, and then I did a bit of research and he was right. This is the Micholitziana. The Frydek is the variegated version of the Micholitziana. And if you've never seen what the variegated version of this plant or the true Frydek is like, do try doing a Google search. It is truly stunning. Now, whether or not suggest it's a difficult plant to find generally, the variegated Micholitziana or the actual Frydek. But as Kaylee Eden was saying on her channel, one thing to bear in mind when it comes to the variegated alocasias is that they have got a tendency towards reverting quite quickly. So they'll either go back to a fully green leaf or a fully white leaf, and it's quite difficult to get them to come back to that variegation. Now, there are some exceptions to that rule, at least in my experience. The Alocasia Gaggiana variegata that I have got is a stably variegated alocasia. Now, that means that it will keep its variegation. And yes, some of the pups I've seen recently from that plant have also started throwing all white leaves, but generally if you hold on tight, I found that they will then pop out a variegated leaf, and yes, you'll probably lose that all white leaf, but they do have relatively stable variegation for me, in my experience, in my care. I will always caveat that. But a lot of the other alocasias, they do have that tendency. So just bear in mind, if you're spending a lot of money on plants like this, just bear in mind that there is a risk that it might go fully white and you might potentially have to chop off all the leaves, or you might lose all the variegation and it might go all green. Now, something to bear in mind about this plant, and alocasias and colocasias is something that I have grown for many, many years now. Actually, this is one of the plants that I used to take care of as a chore when I was a child. So my parents' colocasia, which is very similar to alocasia, and my mother's been growing colocasias for many, many years back home. This the colocasia is also the taro root is similar to the taro root. I think it might even be the taro root, and that plant is edible. We eat the roots of that plant, so it's not just a decorative plant. Granted, back home from the Med, that's also a plant that you will generally just have out on the balcony or in the garden year round. Not a plant that you have indoors, so it can get quite large. But yeah, those are plants that you can have as ornamental plants, but the colocasia, not the alocasia. The alocasia is poisonous, if I'm not mistaken, or toxic anyway. It's the colocasia the traditional green leaf Colocasia is also edible, the root. It needs to be prepared in a certain way, but it is edible. Now, the one thing that she was used to say, and I've lived by this, is that these plants like to have water in their roots. And what that means is, remember, these are not bog plants, these are not carnivorous plants. I'm not saying put a water in a saucer and then sit the plant on top of that. That will kill the plant quite quickly due to root rot. However, these are plants that do grow near waterways. So that's something to just bear in mind. It is a plant that will like to have moisture and be watered frequently in its soil, essentially. So obviously keep in mind, best to have it in a light, airy, chunky soil mix, and invest in a moisture meter, and make sure that you're watering just before it goes fully dry. I have said this in previous videos as well. That is how you will retain some of the leaves and not have to go through the curse of the 2 or 3 leaf plant that you'll get a lot of times with alocasias and also with anthuriums. Now, anthuriums are slightly trickier to kind of get the care just right so you don't end up losing the leaves sometimes, but the alocasia, that is pretty much what it needs. It needs to get watered just before it goes fully dry, otherwise it will drop leaves, and that way you'll be able to retain more of those leaves. And the last little tip that I found has worked well in my care when it comes to this plant, and I'm not entirely sure, I saw this on YouTube about a year ago now. I can't remember what video it was or even what plant YouTuber it was. I'd like to give them credit, so if you do know what that is, and if I remember, I'll put it in the description. If you do know and I haven't put it in the description, please do put it in the comments down below. I'd love to give credit. But I think it might have even been Summer Rain Oaks from Homestead, Brooklyn. I might be wrong about this, but one of the plant YouTubers had gone to a plant nursery and there was a massive alocasia, probably an odorata, so the kind of big paddle leaf alocasia that's just green, and also commonly known, I think, as elephant ears. And what they had there is that these alocasias were almost the size of a tree. They were sitting in a pot that was way too small for what you'd assume would be needed for a plant like that. And they actually were saying that they found that that helps the plant grow more vigorously. So there's a lot of debate about some plants doing better when they're root bound, and I'm not going to go into that today, and I would never say fully root bound your plant in order to, in tiny pot for too long. But these are plants that, because their roots are so chunky, if you lift them out at any given time, usually you'd think going, it's getting root bound, let's repot it. And then within a month or two, you'd need to do the same thing over and over again. Keeping them in a slightly smaller pot, yes, it will mean that you will water them more frequently, but then it means that they absorb that moisture really quickly as well, so you won't get any root rot because they're sitting in water for too long. But also, I found that you get much larger leaves. It will pop out leaves more frequently, and you will get to retain a lot of those leaves. And that's something that I've been trying for the last year and a half. I tried with one of my cheaper alocasias, and it worked really well. So then I started replicating it with all my alocasia, and I have found across the board that that works really well. As I said, again, this is something that I found works in my situation with my care in my environment. It might not work for you, but I'm just sharing what I have learnt through my collection. I think that's everything I wanted to say about this plant today, so I'll start wrapping it up. As normal, if you've got any questions, comments, drop them down below. I'd love to have that conversation. And in the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon, and I truly hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.